So it's mapped the tricks. Whoa, look at that. Ugh, that was painful. That was like when you fall on your skateboard. Again, it has that. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the newly released Cursor Composer 2 model, which over the last 24 hours or so, I have seen some relatively impressive capabilities shared that apparently came from this model, so I'm pretty interested and excited to see how this does on some of our more relaxed and fun testing. Now, really, the blog post for this release is pretty much the same length as the actual footer of their website, so there's really not a lot to say here, but we'll quickly take a look at some of the most important points, and then we'll jump into some basic testing just to see like a general vibe check, if you will. And really, this chart here tells most of the story, where Composer 2 is listed as equal to or greater than some other very impressive models. However, the cost to use it is significantly cheaper than those models, so this could potentially represent a very potent price to performance capability ratio. So in terms of some technical specifications for this model, we do see that it is able to see images as well as agentic capability. The context window is set at 200K, and it is, of course, as they say here, tuned for agentic use and things that would coincide with this being used in Cursor's own platform. So basically agentic coding, and I'm very excited to just see how it does on some of our routine tests that we like to run. Now, speaking of that, before we just jump in and start playing with this, I know that some of my tests are at this point antiquated, and I am working very hard on a completely new testing suite, which will be significantly more difficult for these models than the ones we do currently run. So keep in mind, this will be like one of the last videos with this traditional set of tests, so I am a bit nostalgic. But with that, I do have this open in Cursor right here. I am pasting in, of course, the Browser OS test version 2, where it must create a Browser OS with 5 applications, 2 of which must be games, and then a special feature that it decides to implement. All right, and we see that did happen very quickly, so the speed here was very nice. It did also find a couple of issues here, and being that this is more designed to be used in an agentic sort of manner like this, it will look over the code and then try to fix issues it finds, so that is attributed to that behavior, which is always good to see. Regardless of that, let's now take a peek at our Cursor Composer 2 Browser OS. That looks nice. I am getting almost like GPT aesthetic from this. This is definitely the gradients where it gives us the wallpaper ability to change, and these do all work very well. Oftentimes the GPT models will just give you a list of different selectable background gradients, so I do like that. I think I would say the light blue is probably the most aesthetically pleasing. Can we minimize to the taskbar? We can, but I don't get any indication that the app is open, but that is okay. We do have a clock in the bottom right, which is the correct time in our locale. And of course, let's see, do we have a right click? No, but it's not specifically denoted in the prompt, but I like to see if they include it in their own merit. With that, what do we, okay, Nova Shell, so that's our name. All right, let's take a peek at our start menu. All right, this UI does look pretty nice, I will say. We also have only a few app icons on the desktop here. Can we move any of these? We can't, but I'll just run through them one by one from the start menu. Starting with, of course, the Snake Master himself. Oh, okay. Don't hit walls or yourself. Okay. I don't know that I've really seen instructions in the Snake games before. No look, Snake. That was pretty good. I impressed myself, which I often do. The karma of that statement came to bite me. All right, well, that worked quite nicely. Next up, we have Breakout, which is always pretty fun. I like the way it did a rainbow breakout. That's pretty cool. It's not something I normally see, though. And again, this often seems to happen sometimes where, oh, okay, good. Let me see if I full screen. Okay, yeah, I can, but the game window stays a static size, which would make sense. Next up, the calculator. Next up, let's try the calculator. 50 times 6, 300. Perfect. Divided by 9. Okay, 33 repeating. We have a Notes app, and it will autosave to local storage, which is pretty routinely seen at this point. We can also resize, which is nice. And then finally, the app here is the settings, which we did see when we started. I want to see, this is something I pretty much consistently forget to test, is if the Z index works. So the window in focus should jump to the top, which they do, and that's nice to see. Now finally, our special feature is the command palette. Search for apps. So it's basically like the OS X, the search feature, if you're familiar with it. That's nice. This is nice to see. We can even do wallpaper changes from there. That's a solid special feature, about. And then this would just open our settings very likely. Not bad. Overall, this was a very, very satisfactory browser OS. Next up, I'm jumping straight into hard mode because why not? So I'm giving it the task to create a complete self-contained C++ skateboarding game. This is always very fun to play, assuming the result does get successfully completed, which based off of the benchmark chart, I would very much imagine it will in this specific case. And again, we are using the Composer 2 Fast because I don't see the option here to use the normal one. I suppose I could just do add models and then type Composer 2, which maybe I will do in the next task. Perfect. And we now have a README. Run it, smoke test briefly, so it should just open and then close in 3 seconds. So first and foremost, we do see something that is quite promising. So I'm very excited to play this, and now we will be able to play. All right, let's check out our single file C++ skateboard game. Not bad. I see some glitching or tearing in the map, but overall, that could be solved with, of course, DLSS5 or whatever it's called. I'm kidding. All right, can we grind? Oh, interesting. So it's mapped the tricks. Whoa, look at that. Ugh, that was painful. That was like when you fall on your skateboard and it's painful. So space to ollie, hop off to grind. Q and E is to spin in the air. Very good. And then shift is for faster tricks. Okay, so I think, I don't know. I'm going to maybe just try to see if we can grind on this rail. We should be able to snap onto it and then grind. It's sometimes pretty hard to actually... Okay, good. The problem is he was not carrying enough speed, so we didn't really... Yeah, all right, so maybe there's a bit too much friction on the rail, but we do have mesh colliders on some of these boxes and things, so that's good to see. Overall, this was a good starting point. I would have liked to have seen a bit more color, perhaps some more spacing on the grid in terms of where the specific pieces actually are, and then maybe a ramp of some sort. But overall, the core logic was all there and functional. All right, so I've enabled Composer 2 instead of using the fast one, which they say has the same intelligence. It's just the usage allotment will get eaten up more if I'm using the fast one, and I'd like to be able to run some more tests. So I do want to give it the chance to make this better. So I'm giving it some feedback, basically saying it needs an overhaul, especially in the UI and visual experience, as well as the grinding rail friction is pretty bad. All right, we should now have a completely overhauled game experience with specific emphasis on the UI and just like visual polish. We also want to see, wow, okay, that is definitely a more intricate model, at least of the person so far. We do have some different colored elements, and there are some ramps as well. Now, a lot of times some of the ramp faces won't appear, which has been correctly diagnosed in the comments by folks before. I just don't specifically remember what the issue is. This is well done. Let's see if we still have the, whoa, okay. We have wheels. That was actually, that was kind of cool. We have wheels on the bottom of the board now. We definitely need to get decent speed going, maybe off a ramp, and we can pull one of these. I'm not in love with the key mapping being used with the number keys on the top of the keyboard, but that was sick. Okay, that was pretty cool. The way it grinded up that, like, all right, overall, this was a improvement in how we asked for things. Although now I don't know if I see the score actually, like, going up, but regardless, this was more focused on visual improvement than logical improvement, so not bad. So this next test is pretty difficult, and I've only had luck with it with Gemini 3.1 Pro, Opus 4.6, and GPT 5.4 Thinking. This is to design and create a 3D quarterback simulator game. Essentially, it needs to allow you to play as either the quarterback or receiver for American football, and should in 3D with a somewhat properly and detailed drawn game field actually allow you to either throw the ball to the receiver or to catch the ball thrown from the quarterback as the receiver. So I've begun this in plan mode just to try to do some more proper testing methodology with this, but just in having given it this initial prompt. So it has created its plan, and I'm going to allow it to build it now using the slower Composer 2 and not the fast variant. I will be very, very interested to see how it does on this test, as this is a test I've seen that really separates like models in terms of their leagues. No pun intended, because it's a sports game prompt. Let's just see if it works. Okay, I see models drawn, so let's just try. Not bad. So the throw power we see there is something that I saw with the GPT 5.4 result, not in the Gemini 3 or Opus 4.6, where it's almost like the Nintendo Wii style golf game for Wii Sports. Now, okay, we do see a crosshair at the end of, not a crosshair, a field goal thing. I don't know why I can't speak for 1 second, but okay. That should be it. That's just BS. The lighting's bad, and these don't necessarily look like humans, but the logic is functional. It did draw the map properly, and really this would not be horrifically difficult to say, okay, turn these like weird cubes into actual rigged animated human models, which may be something to do, though I would like to as well try. Oh, okay, this one. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, the quarterback logic worked all right. The receiver, perhaps not as much. Next up, we're going to try the Flight Combat Simulator game. This is probably one of my favorite tests to run with these models because the end results, assuming that they do work, which nowadays most of the time they do, are very fun to play. So we'll see how it does. This is, I suppose I should give some insight into the prompt. It needs to create a Flight Combat Simulator game with 3 specific plane models to choose from, some enemy logic, and then rounds that increase in difficulty, assuming you do beat all the enemies in a first round. All right, we should have a playable result. Again, this is very GPT-5 kind of dark aesthetic UI looking. Regardless, let's see if we can engage enemies. Okay, there are ammunition tracers and there is some flying, but the logic here is not quite right. Does the propeller plane have a propeller? Okay, it does. Doesn't spin. This is like gonna give me a headache. Let's just look at the final Stealth Delta plane model. Oh, okay. Very interesting. So apparently we have an improved result, and it did also tell us why this felt sickening, which is nice to know, I guess. But regardless, let's take a peek now. Okay, and we should just see better plane models. That is significantly, significantly better. A wonderful improvement, although... Okay, good. We do have ammunition tracing. Oh, wow. I actually may be able to sustain enough damage here to see if the combat logic works, which is that if the plane actually, like the hull damage gets too much, it should just crash to the ground and then fade to black for 2 seconds. All right, and as we saw right there, the effect when you do actually lose was pretty well done. Let's see if the propeller plane now has a spinning propeller. It still doesn't, which would have been a nice thing to see in terms of attention to detail, but regardless of that, okay, we'll now get a very good look at what it's actually like when the hull damage gets too much. So we even have some little particle effects that show when we do take damage. Overall, that's not bad. This is definitely a significant improvement over the previous result. Oh, wow. And we even have some water in the map and things, so that's cool. If we hit the ground, do we actually... No, okay, so sometimes that happens. It's like 50-50. Not bad. I'm pleased with this result. Next up, we're going to try a Python 3D first-person shooter test. This is instructed to create a Python 3D FPS with a minimap that shows the location of the player as well as the opponents, visual ammunition traces that can be seen, and it is instructed to not use Ursina, as we want to see a little more kind of a raw take on this. So we'll see how it does. All right, now this is really weird because this is the second time in the span of like 3 days I've seen this happen. It was in the GPT-5.4 mini test where everything was rendering backwards, as we just saw there. I don't believe that it caught the inversion issue here. So we have Rotkiss Neon. Let's just start. Hey, you know, this is now rather disturbing because we're stuck in this tiny little room. I can't seem to move, and there's 2 enemies. So we should be able to jump. Okay. Yeah, the big issue is we're stuck in this room, and the minimap looks good, though, and there are some ammunition tracers. This does look like it has potential. It's just... All right, I'm going to swap to fast. So we'll see if we can fix this. All right, supposedly our issues are fixed, and the fast model does make a big difference in terms of the speed. Well, the minimap seems to have changed. All right, you know what? I like this. We can still jump, and we're just combing through those, which is good. Also, the entirety of the game is a bit funky, but I do like the map. I really do like the mini map here. I think it looks pretty good. I don't know that we're actually going to be able to get to the other enemies. Is what I would have said were I a fool. Okay. An improvement nonetheless. So apparently this thing is multimodal, which means that we're going to be able to provide it the Stevie Slappis hand-drawn portfolio wireframe and then tell it to use this as inspiration to create a modern tech portfolio. I am on fast now because I'm not super worried about the usage allotment getting chewed up for the duration of this video. I did just sign up for a plan here. For some reason I didn't get offered the free 7-day trial. It was just like, your payment method does not allow this. You can sign up now. And I was like, okay. So the prompt here with the Stevie Slappis portfolio wireframe is just saying, use this as inspiration and craft a modern high-tech portfolio website that features a high-end design and showcases the portfolio owner's prowess at coding. To do this, implement special features that are complex from a CS/ML implementation standpoint. Now it's gone ahead and traditionally I would tell it to just do this, contain it in a single script. It's not going to do that here, which is fine. We'll allow it to do as it pleases with this result, being that this is an agentic coding model. All right, supposedly it's done, so let's take a peek at this. I'm very excited. I saw some things that were potentially kind of cool. Okay, we got a little snake going on there. It did get Stevie Lapis. Now, a lot of times they'll just do TV Lapis. We also have a cursor trace effect that seems to be somewhat elastically linked to the location of the cursor. Interesting nonetheless. We have SL for Stevie Lapis, and this is cool to see. It actually did keep some of the weird lines that are drawn in the wireframe source image. That is not commonly seen in this test, that they actually keep those lines or try to implement them. I'm impressed to see that. Projects in ML Recommender. Describe your interests, free text, diffusion, scheduling, GPU tail latency, hybrid retrieval. Oh, I was reading this as a sentence. This was not a sentence. It was a bunch of different specific words. Okay. Cool. Okay. Overlapping stems GPU, overlapping stems kernel. Interesting though, as the prompt did tell it to implement things that would show some level of prowess in some of the machine learning concepts, which would be represented by this little specific demo. Drag nodes, watch the graph settle into low energy states. All right. I like this. It's so like springy. Well done. Okay, and then the contact, we just have a basic thing. How the ranking works, CS details. Pretty cool. Stevie Lapis features run locally in your browser. Not bad at all. This one shouldn't be too complicated for it. It is the test to create a beautiful detailed subway scene using JS. We want to just check how well it can artistically create a static subway scene that looks visually appealing. All right, so here is our subway scene. Now it did briefly open in like a tiny sliver preview pane in the actual IDE, and it looked very, very impressive. So now the big issue is we can't actually move around it. I don't actually remember off the top of my head if that is denoted in the prompt or not. No, I even said don't worry about movement. Just a lot of times they'll implement the ability to actually look around in the scene. Therefore, I'm going to ask it to implement that. Now let's try to, yep. This is very nice. There are elements of this that I'm quite pleased with. Mainly, I suppose I would say the lighting. The movement was implemented very quickly and also nicely. It is not horribly difficult to have implemented that into this specific thing, but still, we have a trash can there. The illumination looks good. Something, again, I really did like is if we go all the way down here, hey, we even have a staircase there. So, unfortunately, oh, okay, a staircase to the ceiling. The outbound sign there looked really good. I almost have to wonder if these are attempts at payphone booths or if they are attempts just at like posters. I'm pleased with this result. I mean, it's not perfect. Yeah, there's a lot that's kind of odd with it, but the lighting has really won me over. I am kind of a fan of what I see here. Maybe it's just like the neon, like synthwave somewhat aesthetic. So for the final test, we're going to be giving it the drum kit simulation test, where it has to create either a 2.5D photorealistic or 3D virtual drum set that is playable by just hitting the keyboard. So for this, we're looking to see if the sound mappings are correct, if the arrangement of the drums is as they would be in real life. That is something that pretty much every model I've ever tested has consistently struggled with, is properly orienting these drums in the world space in the way they would actually look in real life. So it'll be interesting to see how this does with this. Additionally, again, we are just in the specific fast model right now. It is very, very fast, so that's just nice to have. All right, let's check out our drum kit simulation. very, very well done in terms of the way it drew these drums. Sound works. The orientation of them is nice. I do want to just run through all of these first and foremost. And latency between pressing a key and getting the sound to play is also something to kind of consider. And this is very snappy, so I like that. This may be one of the best Phil Collins tests that we've been able to pull off. Again, it has that... Oh, okay, so they all do it. Nice effects on the cymbals, and they're not obnoxiously loud. This did a very, very good job with this specific test in all aspects of it, I'm going to say. So, I suppose overall that is going to conclude our first look and test of Cursor's new Composer 2 coding model. I'm happy to have been able to test it in both the fast mode and the non-fast mode. Apparently, as they say, it is the same level of intelligence. The difference is it's 3 times more expensive to use it in fast mode, but it is significantly faster. So to quickly look back at some of these results, I suppose starting with not the introductory blog post, of course, but the browser OS, it did a nice job. I was seeing a lot of hints of kind of like GPT aesthetic color palettes with specific emphasis where I had to give examples like this settings pane right here is almost like a dead ringer for something we'd see in a GPT model, at least even in like a 5.4 mini or something of the sort would very much put UI elements that kind of look like this with these gradients. Our initial flight combat simulator result was quite horrific, not to really just hold back there. The second one is inevitably the same link that I had open there. The second one was far better, which was nice to see. This did show some good capability in improving previous results, which is very important for a model like this designed to be used in agentic coding. Our Stevie Slappis portfolio website was actually pretty faithfully kept to the initial wireframe, but it was improved in a nice way. I was actually fairly satisfied with this result just based off of some of what we saw, and I was kind of buttered up by the fact that this is one of the few specific examples I've seen here where it actually did keep the specific hand-drawn wireframe aesthetic of these weird little kind of lines there. So interesting, as well as the Snake S. The subway terminal was kind of cool. I like the lighting. There were tiles. Maybe folks will be like, it's not that good. I think I'm just, to be honest with you, I like the vibe of this scene, and I don't know that there's like that's a very subjective take, I guess we could say. The drum sim, which we did just see, was very, very well done. And then, of course, we had some additional tests as well in Python as well as in C++. The second skate game was better. Overall, this skate game, actually we didn't, now that I look back, we had a pretty sick grind up that rail there, I will say. And some of the tricks were just a little odd. That kind of shows some capability lag compared to like high-end state-of-the-art is those will just separately show the board being flipped and not the entire player. So something I've picked up on just as kind of like a differentiator between model capabilities could be said. And then I almost forgot, we did also have the quarterback simulator, which was not great, to be honest with you. Am I going to eat my words? No. It had potential, but the potential needed to be found. Then finally we had our backwards something, oh, Neon Sector. Okay, that was it. This was pretty cool. It did need a second chance to actually allow us to play the game, but the minimap looked very nice. The map was not bad. It had some acceptable logic. The inversion of the home screen and some of the game controls was definitely an issue, but oddly, I also saw the home screen inversion with GPT-5.4 Mini. I don't know what to specifically make of that. So that's going to conclude our first look and test of Composer 2. I had been seeing a lot of interesting things surrounding this on social media and just sharing its capabilities and stuff like that. So I wanted to test it to see how it did on some of the tests that we're used to seeing down on this channel to give some level of comparison with other models that we've seen performing some of these same tests. And overall, I would say it performed nicely. The fast model was definitely the one to pick, in my opinion, just because of how much faster it was. But the caveat is it was also 3 times as expensive. So that would depend on one specific kind of use case, if you will. So with that, that's going to conclude today's video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or in the Discord, and thanks for watching.